So data centers, everybody's talking about them. Where are they going? Where should they be? Where shouldn't they be? So today I'll show you how these massive projects are reshaping our real estate out in the suburbs where you're house hunting. After 25 years and over 3,700 deals, I'll tell you what most buyers never catch. So stick around because I'll give you a free check to run before you buy near any one of these data centers. Let me clear this up. The biggest mix up first, because people ask us about this all the time. They hear data centers near Minneapolis and unfortunately they picture downtown. But most of these projects aren't in Minneapolis at all. The biggest sites are going up in the suburbs and across greater Minnesota. You'll find them south of the river in places like Rosemount, Farmington, Eagan, and Apple Valley. Others are further out, like Pine Island near Rochester. So when people say Minneapolis data centers, that can be a little misleading. Most of the growth is south of the river and outside of the metro. These projects are big, and I'm not going to sugarcoat that. Meta, also known as Facebook, is building a campus in Rosemount that's about 715,000 square feet. The project alone is worth almost $800 million. That's just one site. A planned park in Farmington could hold up to 12 buildings. Google signed a deal to build one in Pine Island and is also behind a large project near Duluth. Xcel Energy, our main power company, says data centers will drive a major share of new power demand coming down the pipeline. Think about what that means when you're standing in a driveway. You may see a quiet home with an open field next door. That field may be farmland today and then become a large campus in a few years, also a data center. You may never know that from the listing. Knowing where to check for this can make a big difference. Some towns are already fighting over these projects. Real quick, before we get into this, maybe you're looking at a home near one of these sites. Maybe you're not sure what's planned nearby. That's where we can help. We've worked with people in these suburbs for years. We'll help you check on public records and help you figure out what's known before you make an offer. Head to the form in the description down below and fill it out. We really appreciate it. Okay, let's get back to the video here. In town after town, city council meetings are packed right now. People are lined up at the microphone and projects worth hundreds of millions are hanging in the balance. Not everyone wants one of these sites near their home. Eagan was one of the first Minnesota cities to say, let's hold on for a second. The city paused new large data center projects. Rosemount, Carver, and Wright County did the same thing. Even Minneapolis hit the pause button, lasting 6 months on bigger projects. So this is going on across the state. One thing that trips people up is what a pause actually means. A pause puts the project on hold while the city writes new rules. The project could still get built later. Keeping power bills and water use in mind is a major concern for a lot of cities and, quite frankly, a lot of people that live in those cities. In a couple of minutes, I'll show you what's driving these pauses. Then you've got all the lawsuits. Down in Pine Island, a judge stopped work on the Google project. An environmental group said the review moved just too fast. The judge agreed there was enough reason to take a closer look and have those bulldozers stopped. Believe it or not, the developer said that one delay could cost around $5 million. Up in Farmington, a lawsuit has been going on for a while. The city approved the project, but a group of residents and a nearby township took it to court. A judge already refused to throw the case out. So that fight is still going on. This can be a trap for buyers. You look up a project, see the word approved, and think it's settled. But the approval doesn't mean the project will be built right away. It could stay stuck in the court system for years. If you check the approval, but not the court case, you're only seeing half the picture. That covers who's fighting these projects. It also leaves one big question out there. Where do these projects keep landing and why? So why are these projects going in the suburbs? Why not just put them in downtown where we have all these empty buildings where everything already is? These campuses, they're huge. A large one can need between 200 and 500 acres. You just don't have that much open land in the city. You don't have it in the first ring suburbs either. So developers go where they can find bigger pieces of land. That's why Dakota County is at the center of this. You've got Rosemount, Farmington, Eagan, Apple Valley, and that whole area sits south of the river. These projects also reach beyond the metro. There's activity in Becker and Cannon Falls, so these projects are showing up across much of the state. Land, it's only one reason. These companies also want to be near large power lines. That's one reason they gather in the South Metro. They also want water nearby for cooling. Our cold winter, believe it or not, that helps too, because when it's cold outside and you have all of this heat inside of your data center, it makes it so they have to have less cooling. That cold air can lower the cost of cooling all of the building. So Minnesota gives these companies several things they need. Specifically, they love our cold winters. Something else surprised me, however. Several of these sites had a different use before. Part of the Farmington site was an old golf course. Some of the land was farmland. People may have thought it would stay that way. Others have expected homes there someday. So you need to make sure you don't assume farmland will always stay farmland, because in many cases it won't. A city can change its plans as the area grows. That can catch buyers by surprise. The question we get most is, could one of these come to my neighborhood? For the most part, the answer is no. The giant companies, they just can't fit into developed areas. There just isn't enough open land. So a large one is unlikely to show up next to an established neighborhood in Minneapolis or St. Paul. Downtown is a little different, however. An old office building down there recently sold and became a smaller data center. So the city is seeing a small version of this too. Where you plant roots can change the risks, so keep that in mind. An established city or neighborhood, well, frankly, it's got less risk. A home near open farmland and large power lines, well, that has more. Before we talk about how to protect yourself, we need to cover the two biggest worries. Those are your power bill and your water bill. So Jason, are these data centers going to raise my power bill? That's a fair question. So let's talk about the part that can hit your wallet. Excel asked for a big rate increase around 13% over 2 years. The state stepped in and regulators approved a much smaller amount, closer to 3% a year. That's well below what Excel first asked for. Some people want to blame the whole increase on data centers alone. The case for the rate increase listed several reasons, including new power lines, cleaner energy, and basic system upgrades. Data centers are part of the increase, but they don't explain all of it. State regulators also put a new rule in place for these giant power users. Data centers have to cover their own costs. They must sign long contracts and pay a big penalty if they leave early. But keep that rule in mind when I share the free checks to run before you make an offer. The goal is to keep those costs on the data centers off of your bills. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. We're still waiting on the final written order for the exact numbers. The rules are in place, and that's the good news for many homeowners. You can breathe a little easier about power. Water can bring more risk, especially if you're on a well. One fact that catches people by surprise: most of us picture water running through these buildings then coming right back out of them. With older cooling systems, much of that water evaporates and turns into vapor. The building uses that water, and that's where the local concern starts. Down in Farmington, this became the big issue. Court papers said the data center could more than double the city's daily water use. But data centers don't all cool the same way. Some newer systems use far less water. Keep that in mind because cooling type is one of the smartest things to check before you buy. Up near Duluth, Google said its site would use much less water than some older sites. If you're buying in a rural area with a private well, you need to think about this. A site that uses lots of water may draw from the same underground aquifer supply you rely on every single day. Make sure you ask two things. What cooling system does the project plan to use? Has it filed for a state water permit? Most buyers never think to ask that second question, but it can tell you a lot. We've covered your power bill and your water bill. Now, let's get to the question that brings more comments than almost anything else that we cover. Okay, so this is the big one. This is the question I think most of you clicked on this video to hear. Does living near a data center tank your home's value? The answer surprised me, to be really frank. The best research we have says no, at least on average. A large George Mason University study looked at home sales near data centers in Northern Virginia. The biggest data center in the country is there. Researchers found no proof that nearby data centers lowered home values. Homes closer to these sites even sold for a little bit more. Still, don't take that answer too far. There are some real catches. Northern Virginia has had these sites for decades. Buyers there already know what to expect. Here in Minnesota, this is kind of new and people weren't planning for it. The study also looked at broad averages. It can't tell us what will happen to one home sitting right next to a project here in Minnesota. Distance can change the whole picture on this. A home 1 mile from a finished campus may do just fine. It may even benefit from new jobs and the property tax money. A home 200 feet from a giant cooling system may face noise, lights, and a blocked view. We also don't have Minnesota sales data yet because these big campuses, they're not finished. For the money, distance is the key. You want the tax benefits without the nearby headaches. That's the real sweet spot to look for. The good news is that checking that distance before buying is easier than you might think. So this is the part I want you to remember because it can help you feel more in control. A developer may talk with a city for a year or more before anything becomes public. That creates a gap between what they know and what you know. You'll need to do your homework. Most of it is free and it only takes maybe 30 minutes. Let me walk you through what you should look for. First, check the city's future land use map. A field zone for farming today may already be marked for future industrial use. That's a big clue. Second, call the city planning department and ask them directly, are there any data center applications near this address? That's public information here in Minnesota, so they have to tell you it. Third, check the county's property records. A large nearby parcel may have been sold to an LLC with a random name. That's worth a closer look because developers usually buy land through these companies. Fourth, check for a moratorium. Find out if one is active, when it ends, and what it covers. Fifth, search the state's environmental review site. A large review filed for a nearby parcel can mean something major is coming. Make sure you hear me on this next part, however. No agent on earth can promise a data center will never show up nearby. Anybody who makes that promise is pulling your leg, and I mean that. A good agent can check records today that are available, but you really need to check them as a buyer yourself. They can also tell you what's known right now. Now you know what to check. While other buyers may write offers without this information, you'll know which questions that you need to ask. The buyers who do a little digging have the edge. They don't see a quiet field and stop looking. That small head start can mean a smart move instead of a massive surprise. If you got a specific home in mind, we can help. just head to the form that's in the description right down below and fill it out. We'll direct you where you need to pull the records and give you straight answers before you make your next move. We really appreciate it. So one more thing. Public money has already committed around $3 billion to Minnesota's most controversial project. If you're buying or selling near those new transit stations, don't miss the timing. I've linked the full breakdown right here. And do us a favor, smash that like button, hit that subscribe button, because we really want to get these videos out to as many people as possible. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video and at the next house.